Hi, I'm Lorena and I wanted to teach on how to make a 9-patch block. What you need is just 3 different variety of colors. And so here I have a Moda, it's called Ticklish, is their line. And I'm going to use this roll of fabric to make all my blocks that I'm going to teach on for the next couple of months. And I'm going to donate this quilt to those who subscribe to my channel and hit like and make a comment. So what I wanted to do is you just pick 3 colors of any fabric and we'll start the tutorial in just a minute. One of the things you're going to need for your sewing machine, and some sewing machines come with it but a lot of them don't, is 1/4 inch foot. This foot makes sure that you have a seam that is 1/4 all the way through, and it's necessary to keep a consistent line, and also for everything to come together the way it's supposed to. These usually have a tendency that they snap into their machine, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab it and I'm going to put it on my machine. What I'm going to do is I'm going to gather my fat. I already have my pattern of how I want my 9-patch to look, and so what I'm going to do is I have a tendency to turn my fabric over. Don't move it too much. And then I get my pins, and usually I direct my pins in the direction that I'm going to sew. So almost I use my pin as an arrow. This is what I want to sew. That's the seam. There's that. And there's this. And so I'm going to go to the machine and just go ahead and sew that. What I tend to do is I make sure this is my arrow mark. I bring my foot down and I start sewing. I make sure that my needle is away from the needle of the machine, and I just go ahead and feed it through. Usually this helps with beginners because then they're having a problem making sure that their line is straight. Let me make sure this is straight. And then you add your next piece. I usually tend to lift my foot. Well, this is called chain piecing, where you let your machine feed a little bit. And I don't know if you see the wall. This is perfectly lined up to the back of, or the side of that black wall that is on the foot. Some feet don't have it. You don't have to have it. As you get better to sew, or become a better sewer, you don't need it. But since I started those classes and a lot of people did not know how to sew, I made sure that I try to make kind of like their life easier. So, and here's another piece. And make sure that your 2 pieces, and one of the rules that I told everybody, make sure your fabrics, the fabrics that are bright and vibrant, are kissing one another. You feed it through, and then you lift your needle and you cut your pieces. So here's one of them, and you open it. Well, you go, and I have a tendency not to iron until I've done my row. So there's my piece. Now I'm going to connect this piece to this piece, and I'm going to pin it. And I'm going to do the same thing. Oh, I think I got it mixed up. I think I got my pieces mixed up. Those my pieces. This goes here. This one probably goes here. It doesn't matter if you mix them up. Then this piece to this piece. Make sure you line it up. And pin in the direction that you're going to sew. And this piece to this piece. Pin in the direction you're going to sew. So here we are. We get the fabric. put it under your machine. And I pull my needle away from the needle of the machine, and I make sure that this fabric is on this wall. Make sure they're aligned together. Pull it up. Now usually here, when it's already sewn together, here they are chained together. And you open your piece. Now one of the things that you're going to have to do is you're going to have to iron one section in one direction, and then iron the opposite direction, the other section in an opposite direction. So we're going to go to the ironing area. Now we're going to iron our pieces, and what I decided to do is I nipped all my little threads that were connecting it together, and I'm going to go and I'm going to press, and I want everything to go, and you just hold it there with the steam. Now I want this to be in the opposite direction. So this is going in this direction. And this one I want to go in this direction. And you can just tug it a little bit. You don't want to stretch it. And this one is going to go in the opposite direction. And why do you want them in the opposite directions? What happens is when you're getting the seams together, they kind of hit snug when you're putting your pieces together. When you're putting these seams together, this going one direction, this going this direction, and this in the opposite, helps it kind of flush in together. And so let's go to the sewing machine. So here's how I want my 9-patch to look. Oops, this way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring my seams, my fabrics are going to kiss again. The bright colors are going to kiss one another. And so if you look here, you see this fabric going in this direction and this fabric going in the direction. What you do is you get them together and you rub them. Some people are people that have real sensitive touch, and you'll feel that they're right on top of each other, and some people are visual. And so what I taught them is once you rub them together, you should feel flat. If not, when you fold it over, you see it that the seam is perfect. And so what I do is once I see it, you put a pin there. Remember, we're wanting to sew right here, so the sharp area of the pin is telling me in the direction to go. Now we're here on the next connecting seam, and you want them to sit nice and flush together. See how it's perfect? Push it in a little bit, and now you pin it, and now we're going to the sewing machine. So here we have the fabric kissing. We have our pins telling us the direction to sew, and we start sewing, and we have our fabric right to the wall, so it makes a perfect 4th-inch seam. And usually you don't really have to fiddle a lot. Once you have this area, make sure the fabrics I'm going to take the pins off. I'm going to leave it there. And I'm going to open it and see if I did my seams right. And here's my perfect seam. My perfect seam. Now we're going to do the next piece. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to pull it down here. And you see they're opposite. This is going in one direction and this is going in a different direction. And to me, visually, it makes like an X. You rub it together. Then you pull it down, you see it's perfect. That's where you pin. And I tend to pin right on the thread line where we sewed earlier. And here's another. We're getting it together, and there's the perfect thing, seam. And then I rub it, sew it on the thread, pin it on the thread line, and we're gonna sew this in the direction I pinned. So now we're on the machine again. Make sure that I'm on my wall. I don't know if you see the wall. Start sewing. So now it's off the machine. Yes? So now it's off the machine, and we're going to see if I did my seams right. And so here are my seams. There's one there, and there's one there. Why does this matter? Because when you start doing bigger blocks like stars, repeating crosses, the seams visually affect how the quilt piece looks. And so we want to make sure that all our seams connect perfectly. We're going to go iron it, and we're going to the ironing area next. So here's my block that I just finished sewing, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it over. I'm going to go ahead, and what I tend to do is when I'm doing blocks is I tend to iron them either inwards or in one direction. Depending on your style, different people iron them differently. Some people, especially when they're doing bigger, more complicated blocks, they open this seam. It's all based on your preference. The way I learned is you turn it in one way or the other. But it's an individual taste when you're making your quilt blocks. So what I tend to do is I grab the edge of my fabric and I just iron it. And this is also setting the seam, and I tend to go. And some people will go, and you want everything to be nice and flat and beautiful. And then here, you just pull a little bit. You don't have to pull a lot. And so there's your block. Then this is your 9 block. And we're going to do probably 2 or 3 of them so that we can add them to our quilt. Yes. So this is the end of our tutorial of how to make a 9 patch. This is what they will look like when you're completely done. It doesn't matter if you can have a different variety of fabrics, and the more you make, the more you can make your quilt. You need at least 12 of these to make one quilt. I think that back here I have maybe 9, and I added a solid piece in the middle of each one. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make each block, and by the time we're done, I have enough pieces to make a full quilt. I'm going to donate or give away the quilt to whoever who subscribes and hits likes and makes a comment to my YouTube account. Well, have a great day, and I hope you enjoyed this little tutorial on how to make a 9 patch. Have a great day, guys.